How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to do a follow-up video for some of the Mcreator tutorials. One tutorial that I made a while ago was creating custom modded blocks, no coding, in Mcreator 2023.3. And I got a question from Mr. Capital, if I'm pronouncing that right, wanting to know how we can make blocks naturally generate in the world. So we got a bunch of stuff here, and I want to actually open up some of them we've actually used before. This may be a different version, but it will still work. But I want to show how you can make things naturally spawn in the world in case you're new to Mcreator. So let's go ahead and go to some of our ores, and we got magma ore, ruby ore, and then loot tables here. So we've already created something here. If you guys don't know how to create the blocks, we do have a tutorial on that. You can see it up at the top right of the video. Go ahead and click on that, and I'll show you the basics and the beginner style of how to create your own custom ore inside of Mcreator. But let me go show you with this here. We're just going to duplicate this and then just name that tut. Let's go ahead and go into our block here, our duplicate of that. And you can see we have our textures here. We're going to act like you guys have already set everything up here. But we're going to go all the way down to the generation tab. This is where you would want it to be. So I'm going to walk you through what we have set here. And I'm going to do my best to explain what some of them mean. If you don't know what some of these things mean, your best bet is honestly to just play around with the ore and play around with some of the settings until you can get it to work properly. But from starters, when you first create a block, you will always have this page and you will think, hey, maybe it'll naturally spawn, but it will not because you have not checked to enable. If you check this check mark here, this is where everything will start at. The moment you check that, it will naturally spawn at whatever is defaulted in your settings here. But you have to make sure you turn that on first because by default, blocks are not set to naturally spawn in your world. Once you have that turned on, you need to go ahead and make sure you set a list of blocks that you want it to replace. Now you can do tags in here too if you have a tag or a custom tag from a custom block you've made elsewhere or from another mod and you know the tag of that block. You should be able to put that in here, take your mod, throw it into a mod pack, and it should recognize that tag and match it with a block. I've not really done that too often, so I'm not messing with that one. Also, if you guys heard my fan for the first few minutes of this video, I'm sorry, I had my gain way too high up on my microphone. But you want to go to make sure that you want to set what blocks that this can replace. So this one was an ore, it was a darker ore, so I mostly chose darker blocks. I did have 2 lighter color blocks in here, but I do have mostly darker colored blocks set in here, meaning that whenever this block will spawn naturally in the world, whenever the code runs, it will run and try to find deep slate, and it will try to find cobbled deep slate and try to find polished deep slate and all these different blocks that I've selected. And if the code decides, hey, let's go ahead and spawn it, it'll try to find these blocks. And if it does find it there, then this block of yours will replace some of these blocks. It runs the same way for like iron inside of Minecraft. Iron can spawn with a higher rate in certain levels of the world, and then it has blocks it can replace. So if it spawns higher up on top of a mountain, that iron ore can replace stone, and then you'll find yourself some iron ore like veins. And that's kind of what this works at. So go ahead and hit your plus button next to it, and you can choose whatever you want here. Now I got a couple different things here I was messing with, but let's just say I wanted to do warped planks. If I click that and click select, I just added that to this list. So if I scroll all the way to the right, you'll see it here. So now if I have this to spawn in the nether, this ore will have a chance of replacing warped planks if that was naturally generated in the world. I don't believe warped planks are naturally generated, but if it was, it could replace that block on spawn when it generates the world. I'm going to remove that entry because I don't want that in here. Now the next one's pretty powerful on this situation. Let's say you're creating a certain ore and it's a very rare ore. You can make it rare by turning all the numbers down to be very low. But on top of making your numbers very low, you can actually have it only spawn in a certain biome. So you could also find some of the rarest biomes and make it to where that ore can only spawn in those biomes. If you click the plus button here, you can see I have the bloodless biomes. That's one of my custom ones. But if we scroll down here, we have every single biome possible in every single dimension throughout the entirety of Minecraft. And you can choose those. So if I look up the word plains, you see we got plains, snowy plains, and sunflower plains. If I select plain and you selected, now this means if this ore tries to naturally spawn, first it will check the biome. Okay, it finds a plain biome that you're near. Once you get into that plains biome, it'll also check all the blocks in the ground, and it will try to replace one of these blocks or some of these blocks with that ore. So both of these have to be met now. So beforehand, when I had this emptied, it could spawn anywhere in the world, and it could replace these blocks. But the moment you add a biome restriction, now it has more rules that it has to follow, meaning it has to be in a certain biome, and it has to have these certain blocks around for it to be able to spawn. Now, generation shape, this is based off the new version of Minecraft, so uniform, my bad, was the original way it used to spawn in the older versions of Minecraft, where it was kind of scattered around, and it was just based off your numbers that you set down here. Triangle is what they use in the newer versions of Minecraft. If you've ever seen the graphs that people have been posting about the best spawn rates and this and that, and they have big old diamond looking triangles and stuff, and the higher up it gets, the less of it you'll find, and the lower it gets, the more of it you'll find. That's what this is. So if we go to uniform, that will be using the older version of spawning, like the older versions of Minecraft used to use. Now, if you can read this here, the next section down says average amount of ores, or imagine the average amount of ore groups per chunk. So a chunk is 16 blocks by 16 blocks. That's the size of a chunk. Now, how many of these groups of ores? So let's say diamonds have a chance of spawning anywhere between 1 diamond ore all the way up to 8 diamond ores. So how many of those diamond ore chunks do you want to spawn? Let's say you select 10 of them. So it'll try to spawn a cluster of those diamond ores 10 different times when you spawn that biome in. And this is where you got to be very careful when it comes to doing some certain things, is the numbers of ores in each group. So if you have 2 groups spawning in each chunk, but you have 200 ores spawning in each group, then that could roughly mean 400 ores of that specific ore can spawn in that one chunk. So your best bet is to not turn these too high. I have these high right now for testing purposes, just to make sure the ores themselves actually work and spawn properly. But you need to mess with those. The higher the numbers, the more it will spawn, and also the more it could break your biome if it spawns in there, and it spawns too often, it could replace too many blocks and destroy your biome. You can also click on these little check marks or these little question marks next to these sections, and it'll tell you what the default Minecraft stuff uses. So coal itself is actually a really high number. So the amount of groups that can spawn in one chunk of coal is 20. The amount of ores in each group for coal is 17. So if we put 17 here and 20 here, now your ore will spawn just like coal does in Minecraft. If you look at lapis lazuli, there's only 7 ores in a chunk, and then lapis lazuli over here only has a chance of spawning one chunk or one group per chunk. It gets a little confusing, but if you want your mod that you're creating or your block or your ore to spawn naturally and actually mimic a block that's already in Minecraft, to mimic an ore that's already in Minecraft, then just click these little check marks here, and you can actually copy the numbers they have here for coal, iron, gold, redstone, diamond, and lapis. I would suggest doing that until you feel comfortable enough understanding these numbers, and then you could turn them up based on what you want. Like I said, though, I have mine very high for testing purposes. And then your generation height. Now, if you click on this, of course, you can see more information. Coal will pretty much spawn majority of places. The moment you reach below 0, you don't see it very often, but from level 0 all the way up to 256, coal can spawn. Copper can spawn up to -16 underground, all the way up to 112. Iron ore can spawn all the way down to -32, all the way up to 256. So you get more chances of iron spawning. Gold ore is -64 to 32. Redstone is -64 to 32. Diamonds also 64, but 16. Oh wait, my bad. Redstone was -64 to -32. Emeralds is -16 to 256, and then lapis is -64 to 64. So you need to go through here and kind of figure out how you want your block to spawn. If you want it to mimic Minecraft's ores that are already in the game, or do you want to make it your own? I would just suggest making it your own, but if you're not too sure on the numbers, go ahead and follow their defaults that they have selected here, which actually mimic how Minecraft normally works. So I have my minimum set to -53, which is like kind of like a gold ore, but it only goes up to 12 instead of 32 like gold ore. So mine's roughly between gold ore status. Now that should be it. So if we wanted to, we could click save. I'm not going to save that mainly because I already have that block and I don't want to have multiples of it spawning. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I'm going to let it compile up here. It's taking a second because I have not messed with this mod in a while. I'm assuming it's pretty big still. I've done a lot of developing with this one actually. And if we go ahead and click play, and it might take a second to load if it's your first time launching this. If not, it may be a little faster. Go ahead and go to a single player world. Create a new world real quick just to make sure we can find it. Go to creative. And it looks like we actually spawned in one of our custom biomes, which is kind of cool. I wanted to just put everything in one biome. So like we have different structures that can spawn here, which I think is pretty wicked myself. But if we go ahead and go to spectator mode, we should be able to fly down. And you can see we got some more ores here. But if you look down here, you notice how my numbers were naturally really high for testing purposes. You can see we're down here in like, what is this? The deep slate area. And it's spawning naturally in the deep slate areas a lot more than normal. We also have we have a lot of mobs that spawn in this biome also. But where there's deep slate and there's a bunch of the deep slate variants and so on and so forth, since the numbers are so high, they are spawning a lot more. So with that being said, that is how you spawn your ore naturally in the world. If there's anything you guys would like to see more about tutorials on Mcreator or Cube.js, let me know what you guys would like to see down below and I will do my best to get to it. I do have kind of a busy life and I got other things I'm working on, so I'm very sorry for the videos being random here and there, not such a schedule. But if this did help you guys out, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.